Hello, everyone. I am so happy to welcome Katrina Robertson to Envision Together. She's the guest for today for this episode, and she has lots of interesting things to share with us. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself personally and professionally, and then we're going to jump right into some questions for her about being a jury member and her book,
Yeah.
Juror Number 11, and all sorts of things we're about to discuss. So, Katrina, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself to us in your own way.
Yes, of course. I'm so thrilled to be here with you and honored that you asked me to come and be a part.
Mhm.
Personally, I actually grew up in the Pacific Northwest area, Washington, Oregon, but moved here in high school, Arkansas. And so I've been here long enough to call myself a Southern girl. People from the South don't think I have a Southern accent, but if I'm speaking to somebody from the North, they say, "Oh my goodness, I love that Southern accent." So I'm a little bit of a hybrid. But I've my husband and I have been married for almost 27 years now. We have five children, two biological, three we adopted from the foster care system. And then professionally, I'm a financial advisor, an investment manager, and I've been with a local wealth management firm for about 15 years now.
Hmm. Wow. So you have quite a wide range of experience, and we're going to be seeking to glean from all of that during this interview. All right. So we're going to jump right into it. You wrote a book called Juror Number 11, and you're sharing about your experience on a murder trial, and we'll hear more about it a little bit later. Let's first learn about your experience being selected as a juror, and what was your personal concerns about serving on a murder trial?
Well, for those who aren't familiar with how jury selection works, you're one of those lucky individuals that get that card in the mail that says, you've been selected for jury duty. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to serve on a trial. You go to the courthouse, you usually start with a little education thing where everybody comes, and then you've got a period of time that you are active where you will receive periodic calls, messages, whatever, that says, okay, we've got a case that needs a jury, and they pull a certain section of the current active jury members to come up. And then you go through a process called voir dire, where they basically try to find the best non-biased
Mhm.
group to judge the trial, basically.
Mhm.
And so I wouldn't necessarily say there was a concern for me specifically with being selected, but I would say that I had a feeling of tremendous responsibility. I mean, myself and 11 and other individuals were tasked with a decision that's forever going to alter the trajectory of an individual's life, and then significantly impact many others who were involved and a part of it. So it was something that I didn't take lightly and was heavy on my shoulders.
Mhm. The reason I ask you is I've been a part of that first part of what you just shared, where I get the card and I have to go in, but I've never actually been selected to serve on any trial. Murder.
Yes, I've been called up there on multiple occasions, just had not ever actually gotten selected. So they once they got it down to, I don't know, maybe 25 people or so, then they basically put everybody's names in a hat and they draw out 14 names. So it is very random there at the end. 14 because they had two alternates. So I was juror number 11, they pull them out, juror number one, call a name. They got, so I almost got out of it. I was at the end, but no, my name was called.
I see. And later, everybody might understand why we chuckled a little bit because this is one you may have wanted to get out of in retrospect, maybe. This is me
Yeah.
putting that out there, but we're going to hear from you as we continue. Um, so, It's funny because I still want to serve on a trial, and it's simply because I've never been selected. So,
Right. I mean, I found the whole thing fascinating, and I've always been interested in the whole process and the judicial system. It was something that I I mean, this was a murder trial, so it's much more serious. It was also going to be a 4-day trial, and I'm a very busy person, and it's kind of like, oh, like it's something that I was actually got the call to show up right in the middle of my daughter's wedding.
oh,
And that was a Saturday, and they said, come to the courthouse on Monday. And I had a lot. When you read the book, I mean, I was in survival mode already. I was kind of like, oh my goodness, I don't have 4 days. But I was I was not one of those that was like, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. I mean, I was interested, and I kind of felt very much a sense of duty
hmm,
to, that it's important. And
right,
um, so yeah, I didn't take it lightly.
okay. Well, thanks for sharing about that and helping people like me have I guess, a deeper look into what it's like to be selected, and I didn't even know about the names in the hat pulling and all that. So, um, now was this jury sequestered, or why or why not?
It was, and I know you'll probably have to edit. Has my voice changed very much
No.
with what I just did there? No. Okay. So it's my understanding for a sequester jury, that's pretty much just for like the high profile cases.
Mm,
And mainly they sequester them for media purposes.
I see.
And this was not a high profile case. It was a murder case, but it had happened, and it was a small town. I live in a small town, but it was had happened 2.5 years prior.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like an old news kind of thing. I mean, I was not familiar with the case at all, and
Okay.
that was not an issue at all in the voir dire process for the jury. So now we were sequestered for deliberations. I think that that is pretty standard. So had we taken days to deliberate, they would have left us there. But um, so like we deliberated during, they brought meals to us.
I see.
But as far as the 4 days, we were not sequestered.
Okay. All right. Thank you for giving us more information about that. So here we are to, I think, a lot of the core of your story. Will you go ahead and outline your experience, including what you believe to have been wrongly done to you? And let's just start there.
Right. So the quick and short answer would be that I felt like I was forced to make a very serious decision with what I felt what like was not the whole picture. That was basically cherry picked information that furthermore was delivered in a very emotionally manipulating way. Beyond that, I realized that as a jury member, you're very much made to feel kind of like a pawn in this game that the players are playing. Everything's kind of dumbed down for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, they can't think critically for themselves. They're not allowed to ask questions. And I don't have a problem admitting what I did wrong, how the mistake that I made. But I wrote the book to kind of tell my side of the story,
Mm-hmm.
to give, so I guess maybe help people walk in my shoes for just a minute, and what got me to that place where I did get the, misconduct allegation. Because I ended up kind of being made the scapegoat for the problems and everything that's wrong with the judicial system. And that was wrong.
So I guess tell us a little more about that. So you served on this jury, and I know you don't want to spoil the book too, so we'll be careful to stay away from too much information. But um, you served on this jury duty, and at a certain point, um,
Well, so I don't mind. I mean, if I can't even remember what the back cover of the book says, I think you get a. I know that in my prologue, I say that uh, I was. I don't know if I say that I was charged with contempt of court. If I don't, I give it away pretty quick. But I know in the prologue, I say that there was a mistrial because of me, and that mistrial was laid on my shoulders.
okay,
So, in my opinion, it's kind of like I think that knowing that up front, if anything, would probably make you want to read what happened. Like, how in the world did a mistrial come about? So, so I don't mind sharing that.
okay. And then um, you said that there's some problems with the justice system. Now, do you think it was something you would say was specific to your local system, or is this something you've had enough time to see as flawed across the board? Um,
Well, so I think it's kind of across the board. But here's the problem. I have people say, well, what would you suggest on how to fix it? Here's the problem. Uh, People make up the system, and people are flawed people, and you've got to, especially when you're talking about uh, people, a lot of money and people's lives at stake. You're going to have greedy, prideful people that are going to manipulate. I mean, that's kind of why attorneys have a bad reputation, right? You know what I mean? It's So as long as you have prideful people and greedy people that are involved, there's always going to be problems. It's just one of those things that, what I got in trouble for is I tried to learn more about the victim in the case. So
mhm.
that's what I got in trouble for, was trying to learn more about this person. If we if we walk through a little bit about why I was in such a frustrating place, if you know anything about how trials are run, um, of course you're supposed to assume innocent until proven guilty, right?
Right.
And I very much came in with that mindset of innocent until proven guilty. The defendant was a 60-year-old piano teacher, never been in trouble, who shot and killed her husband,
Hmm.
claimed self-defense.
Hmm.
So the when you have a trial, the prosecution is always allowed to speak first. So when they have opening statements, prosecution speaks, then defense gets a chance, and then prosecution then gets a second turn.
Hmm.
Same thing with witnesses. Prosecution witnesses go first, and then with closing arguments, you have prosecution first, then defense, and then prosecution gets a rebuttal.
Yeah.
And then, in addition to that, there was one defense attorney and four prosecutors for this case.
Hmm.
So it's felt very uneven right off the bat.
Okay.
And then, when you have these four people working on the prosecution that were able to divide up all the tasks and the arguments, and then they were able to call 17 witnesses to testify. We had literally 2 solid days of listening to the state's witnesses basically say the same thing over and over and over and over again. It was very redundant. Some of the witnesses were only there for emotional manipulation purposes, had no ability to testify to anything about the individuals or um, the charge, which was first-degree murder. And in order to prove first-degree murder, you have to, or be found guilty, you have to prove intent to kill. And they do things like put up a blown up picture of the autopsy body of the victim for us to stare at while they gave arguments. I mean, just kind of like, is that necessary? You see what I'm saying? Like, play mind games with you. So all that. And then when the defense got their chance to bring witnesses, there were 14, and all but two of them prosecution objected to.
Mm-hmm.
and none of them were allowed to speak.
Wow.
So we were left in this situation, like I said, this we don't get a full picture. We've got this cherry picked information. Don't ask any questions.
So
Sit back there and make a decision.
you felt like the other witnesses, um, you felt like a whole perspective wasn't shared.
Correct, correct. The whole perspective was, the defendant herself was really her only witness to speak, and um, really, well, you just really rarely is it the defendant is their own witness,
Why?
and
Why was the trial?
I wanted to know more about one of the reasons I wrote the book and I'm doing podcasts is I love hearing stories and I love hearing people's stories. And I wanted to hear her story. And I also wanted to hear this victim's story. And that wasn't allowed. All I knew is that he'd been shot. He was possibly an alcoholic and that she was claiming self defense. We were not allowed to know any of his prior history, prior
Why was
his
that decision made?
so of course I then after the fact go and try to figure because during the trial for when we all were called back when the for to see if there'd be a mistrial granted or not,
Mm-hmm.
uh I found out that so the defense attorney had made the statement, the state objected to all of the 404B evidence. And so, of course, I'd run back home, and I'm very much a researcher and an analytical and a critical thinker. And so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize that you can't really be any of those things on a jury. You've got to just feed what's given to you. And so I run home, and well, so 404B evidence is evidence of a individual's like character or prior actions that may indicate or prove another action.
Mm.
And so they were able to, so that did answer the question that all of those witnesses were indeed there to speak something of that nature, but they
Okay.
were all disallowed. Part of me is kind of like, okay, I understand what they're getting at, just because
So they were more character witnesses,
I
not.
think, I
Okay.
think I don't know 100% sure, I
Okay.
think. But when somebody is claiming self-defense, you want to see if there's a pattern for them to have needed self-defense, or was this just a one-time out of the ordinary kind of thing? So it's I think certain states uh that kind of evidence is more often allowed. It just kind of depends on the state. And ultimately the judge. I mean, a judge can decide to allow whatever they want.
Okay.
And it could have been, and so here's the other problem I have. As we were given the instructions, we were told, as a jury, we were given instruction to be a judge of also the witnesses as far as their credibility and their testimony and whether it was relevant or not. But in this particular case, we were not given the opportunity to judge the majority of the defense's witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I have no idea. They could have been completely irrelevant, not credible yahoos that just came off a load of turnip trucks. I have no idea. We weren't given the opportunity to hear them. And
Okay.
so I'm like, okay, so you're giving me the responsibility to make this huge decision but not allowing me to be privy to all of the information. And so I just really had a problem with that. And so, I mean, of course, I was like, the judge would, if the judge was making the decision, well, this is a jury trial. We're making the decision. And so, yeah, that was, for me, that was a problem.
Okay. You know, I just want to throw this out there. Would you say that the type of experience you had, whether it was listening to the lawyers argue the different sides, um, even the jury and yourself as part of it, and the judge, Is it much like what we see on TV or not?
That's the funny thing. From my experience for a murder trial, absolutely, it was just like that. And for me, that actually was surprising
Mm,
because when the trial started and the attorneys prosecution came out there for their opening statements, they brought the drama.
mm,
And I was kind of like, oh goodness, I thought that this now the defense attorney, not so much, but that round of four prosecutors, it was yeah, it was the theatrics and the yelling and the stomping and the
yelling too?
emotional manipulation tactics. And I was kind of like, good grief. I mean, I understand you want to hold our attention or get our attention or whatever, but I didn't come here to be entertained.
Mm.
And it's like I want facts, not theater class. You see what and
And you really,
that's me,
oh, okay.
you know. So
And is this the
they,
only
I mean, they were great speakers.
is this the only jury you've served on so far, or you've done others?
That's the only one. Like I mentioned, I've been like called up, but have never like made it through the whole
Right.
voir dire process and actually served on a
Okay.
jury.
Yeah, I thought you said that earlier, but I just wanted to make sure.
Sure, right.
Okay. So, we're going to shift just a little bit. We wanted the audience to kind of get a feel for your experience, but I want to go a little deeper too. I
Sure.
know that as this played out, and you were, what was that charge again that was brought? Contempt,
Contempt of court.
contempt of court. And all of this was being done publicly. You're in a small town.
Right, right.
So I'm naturally wondering, wow, uh, peel back
Yeah,
the layers and tell us what public slander might feel like. I know
right,
you
right,
mentioned to me in a previous conversation that you felt like you were publicly slandered. So I just want to know
right.
about that quality itself. What is the pain of that? And I shared with you that I know something of that. I don't think on the level that you experienced it, but that's what would make me curious about it. I want listeners to know from us what does that feel like?
Oh goodness, it's probably one of the most nauseating feelings, like not in your stomach feeling. So that it was the defense attorney that uh, grabbed hold of the uh, misconduct complaint, and he's the one that wanted contempt of court, and he asked for a mistrial, which was bizarre because we didn't even find his client guilty of first degree. We ended up with the lesser charge of second degree. And by him wanting a mistrial, actually opened her up to first degree all over again. So that we could go way off on that. But he fought when we all went back, we all got letters saying we had to come back. Somebody wasn't acting right. And at that time, I didn't even know it was me. Go back in, and each of the jury members had to come out and testify and stuff. When they saved me for last, of course, I realized, oh, this is all about me. Get me up there. And that's when he jumped into his theatrics. And he painted me to be this horrible person with ulterior motives. And even so, the original judge for the case, I knew personally. And again, small town, everybody knows the judge. Now he's a client of mine professionally,
Mm-hmm.
but he used that to say that he said I lied during voir dire, that I was asked if I knew the judge, but that question was never asked. And of course, after the fact, when I had my hearing, all of the transcripts was pulled and it was confirmed. Never was. He said he asked me specifically, "Do you know the judge?" and that I had lied to him, which I'm like, that question was never asked. And then he tried to say that like I would somehow monetarily profit or loss on how the outcome of the case. I mean, it was just, I mean, you know, character is something that is is really one of my most valuable possessions. My character and my integrity. I mean, I'm a financial advisor. People trust me in a very intimate way.
Mhm.
And like I said, we're in a small town, and it doesn't take much to be well known in a small town. But my husband has been a pastor and chaplain for the
Mm.
entire time we've been married. I am a financial advisor, and to have somebody publicly uh, and then print newspaper articles that conflicted my character.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when your true motives and intentions are completely
But
just dragged through the mud.
what does devastation feel like to you, though? Like for me, when I went through something like that, um, it caused me to get depressed. It caused me to be angry at times. Uh,
Absolutely.
it caused anxiety.
Oh yeah. Anxiety
So
is a big one
that's
for
what I'm
me.
saying. What did public slander feel like to you?
The main thing that I struggled with was the anxiety. And I've always been a big emotion person. I feel my emotions, I wear my emotions. I'm not one that's able to kind of put a mask on, put the happy face on when I'm pretty real and vulnerable and genuine. And I I lost a ton of weight. I really got dangerously thin, and it's because I was just nauseous all the
Yeah.
time. And a lot of that, you know, was really, I mean, yes, it was the slander, but then to think that, they had put on my shoulders that I was the one responsible for all of this.
Mm,
And then, like I said, the original judge, he was a personal friend and a client, and he's being dragged through the mud as well. And to
mm,
think that, I mean, it just made me sick that
mm.
um, it's just one slight misstep could cause that much havoc. And yeah, it was the anxiety, and since it was not just the trial and the 5 month period it took before my hearings were done, everything else that was on in my life was almost like I'd wake up each day with what's going to happen today.
Yeah,
What's next?
yeah. I remember having thoughts and feelings like that too, and not only that, it wasn't just what was happening to me, the way it affected my family. And I remember even just saying to God, God, why are you allowing this? Because in my
Amen.
situation, I didn't
Yes.
even do a misstep. I was just
Yeah.
flat out
Right.
lied on, and
Yes.
I'm
I've
like
had,
you, my character is so important to me. Um, but you
yeah,
know what? Even with that, I learned some valuable lessons. I started asking myself, why is it so important to you like that? That it's actually devastating to you if
right.
people can say bad things about you that's not true. So I had to do some soul searching even there
Absolutely.
and say,
Yeah. And
you're,
weed out some of that pride in your heart. It's like,
yeah,
why are you so, yeah, absolutely. But I was there with you too, as far as the anger with God and questioning God. During I've always been a big fighter and advocator for people, especially people without a voice of their own. And I guess that's kind of why I got into the mess I was in. But I really felt the Lord just telling me during this particular period, Katrina, you need to, he brought the verse and it's tattooed on me because I so much needed the reminder. It's probably backwards to you, and your listeners obviously can't see it, but it's Exodus 14:14, which says, the Lord will fight for you. You must only be still.
mm,
And that tattoo was fresh on my arm, and that it was still raised as I sat there in the courthouse when the judge charged me with contempt of court. And I remember just rubbing that tattoo while the tears fell from my eyes. And I said, God, I thought you were going to fight for me.
wow.
I thought you were going to fight for me.
Hmm.
So it
Wow.
was
Yeah,
hard.
that stuff is tough. Um, you mentioned before too that um, you could relate to the characters Naomi and Job in the Bible. How did you experience those emotions, and how did you perceive your relationship with God during that time? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but
Right, right. Well, with those characters specifically, I say, so the church that my husband and I attend, the preacher there he is kind of one of those fireball preachers. I mean, and he's always excited and always happy and always positive and optimistic. And he's kind of an energizer bunny. And I mean, that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And there was a particular Sunday where he was, the sermon all had to do about thinking positive and being grateful and all along those lines. And it was kind of during this season, I was just like, I'm not there. Like I'm not feeling it at all. And he had even mentioned, and like I said, I'm not one that can just mask my emotions
right.
and flip the switch and say, okay, everything's cool now. I couldn't do it. And he had mentioned Job in the sermon, and I had gone home and I was like, you know, uh, Job is not a good character to mention when you're talking about positivity and good attitude, because I went and I read and I wrote down some of the things that, you know, it I found Job, he was weeping, he was wailing, he was crying out to God. He says, God won't hear me. God can't hear me. God is out to destroy me. God has blocked me. God has torn me down. And then he says, God has left me. I mean, he doesn't sound like somebody that was in a it's all going to be okay mindset. In fact, when you read about all of Job's friends leaving him and even his wife, I'm kind of like, well, geez, nobody wants to be around somebody like that, even if they got good reason to be. They're like, hey, I ain't got time to listen to all your wailing and gnashing of teeth. But here's the thing: it was kind of like God allowed him to feel all those emotions, speak those emotions, and he still loved Job. He God was big enough to listen to him. So the character that I wanted to learn more about was Naomi. She's kind of hidden in the background in the book of Ruth. More people hear the story of Ruth than about Naomi, but I wanted to learn more about her because this was a woman who had been through a lot. If you know the story of Ruth and her mother-in-law, who is Naomi, they had all left their land due to a famine, and they go to this foreign land, and I'm drawing a blank right now of where they were coming from and where they were going to, but where they go to, Naomi loses her sons and her husband. They all die. And her sons had not yet had any children. And she had this daughter in law, Ruth, that for whatever reason decided to stay faithful to Naomi, even though her husband had died. And they get word that the famine's over in their land, and so they're going to travel back. And it's obvious by this point that Naomi is pretty cranky over what all she's been through.
Right.
And so we're not real sure why Ruth decides to stick it out with her. But they get back in it, and it becomes clear that Naomi must have probably been a well-respected woman, because when she comes back, all of her old girlfriends are excited to see her. But she's still lamenting the loss of her husband and sons, and she's very bitter. And she tells these friends, and I'll read this. It says, "The Almighty has made my life bitter. I went away full, but the Lord brought me back empty. Don't call me Naomi." And I need to research that. And I did at one time, but it's been a little while. I think it something along the lines of joy or happy. And she says, "Don't call me Naomi, because the Lord has afflicted me and brought misfortune to me." So again, that probably shut all the women up. It's like, let's not let's leave Naomi alone. But she was just being real and honest. And
Yeah.
so that's at the beginning of the book of Ruth. And then the rest of the book of Ruth is the story of Ruth and Boaz and the love story
Yeah.
and all that. And then the book of Ruth closes again with Naomi. And so you turn back to the end, and I think it's interesting that she's on the bookends of it. And so then it picks back up with her by saying, "Then the woman said to Naomi, praise the Lord who has not left you without a family," because Ruth and Boaz have gotten married. Now she's pregnant.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's not left you without a family, Redeemer today. May his name become well known in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in old age. Indeed, your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better than seven sons, has given birth to him. Naomi took the child, placed him on her lap, and they named him Obed, who was the father of Jesse, the father of David. And then if you kind of follow that family lineage,
Yeah.
uh, act eventually you get to Jesus there.
Yeah.
So this is that bitter woman who said, "Don't even call me Naomi because God's brought misfortune in my life." Was as the curtain closes, these women that she felt comfortable enough being honest and vulnerable with come back to her and speak blessing and praises on her still. They didn't judge her for that period of time she was in. But as they set that grandchild in her lap, I'm sure I can see her just kind of exhaling finally and saying, God is good.
Hmm.
God is good. And so I guess that's
Well,
kind of a
when I
long,
heard you just now say with the child on her lap, I don't know why. Well, I'm very visual, but I pictured a child literally on her lap, and when I saw the child on her lap, I just thought hope. There's
yeah,
hope again.
right, right. And that's what you got to cling to is that hope, you know?
Mhm.
So I just liked those two characters, and you really can find them throughout scripture. They certainly are not unique of characters who don't have a problem lamenting.
Mhm. Mhm. And yes, I think we both shared and touched on today how when you're going through difficult times, um, I certainly I've said, God, look, I am angry. And I think one of the good things about that is God lets us. He doesn't tell us that we can't experience the range of emotions even with Him, but obviously you want to kind of be respectful. It's
Of
like
course,
with your parents.
of course.
Raising my daughter, she can get angry with me. She just can't get disrespectfully angry with
Of
me.
course. Yeah. Well, there's a difference between suppressing your emotions and controlling your emotions.
Yeah,
You know, you can there's no need to suppress your emotions. You do need to control them.
yeah.
So yes, that does come with some maturity and something I certainly with my children, the ones particularly who have come from trauma backgrounds, one in particular, very, very angry and has reason to be angry.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean you can keep punching holes in my wall.
Right.
We gotta find a different way to express this emotion.
Hmm. So, what would you say you've learned by going through these painful circumstances? There's always it's like Naomi. It's a bad, bitter, terrible situation, but in the end, you can come out of it learning so much, even after being angry with God, not seeing the whole picture. But then, when you finally do get to the end of it, what were those painful lessons that were learned?
Goodness. Well, I mean, painful situations are unavoidable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're breathing, you've gone through them, you're gonna go through them. I mean, my specific situation, especially dealing with the court and the jury, I mean, that's kind of unique. I've not yet run into anybody else who served on a jury and caused a mistrial. Have not the raising the really hard children and all the pain surrounding that, that's not hugely unique. Us mamas, and when they say they'll break your heart, that is a literal thing. You feel it in your bones when those babies break your heart.
And
Um,
hats off to you being a foster care
yeah,
parent, and then
yeah,
adopting these children, and we all know that's tough work. I've never done it, but I have an aunt who is a social worker, so I get a little bit of an inside story here and there. That is tough work, and it requires a lot of dedication. So, thank you for that.
yeah. And um, one of and this wasn't the direction I was going, but I'll slide this in and say that a lesson that I've certainly learned is sometimes you can do everything right,
Mhm.
but things don't turn out right.
Mhm.
Whether that is you've loved that child unconditionally,
Mhm.
whatever it is, but things fall apart anyway.
Mhm.
Um, and so I guess the lesson is not to, gosh, you got to rise and be victorious anyway and keep
Mhm.
doing it. But I think one of the main things I've learned is one, it's those feelings they are real and they need to be validated. They need to be felt. You've got to you've got to feel it all,
Mhm.
but don't allow yourself to, I guess, stay in that ash pile.
Mhm.
Sit in that ash pile and feel it all, cry those tears, um, ask your questions, but don't stay there. You have to get back up, and that really like true faith is saying, God, my emotions and circumstances are contradicting the truth right now, but I still stand on the truth
Mhm.
and I still trust you, even if,
Well, you
and
know
you
what?
just fill in the blank with whatever that even if is.
Yeah. What you just said actually takes me back. Now I understand even more why you selected Naomi and Job, because it does go full circle. And
Mhm.
why you may be going through a lot of pain, you might be frustrated, you might be like, "Where are you, God?" You might become bitter. Don't park there. Don't get paralyzed. Some people
Correct.
experience very challenging things in life and they get stuck there. They can't move forward from that
Right.
place.
Right.
And so that's kind of like, in a way, Naomi was kind of dooming herself to that when she said, "Call me bitter." Um,
Yeah.
but thank
She
God,
really was.
God
She was.
didn't listen to her own prophecy.
No, he didn't, and he blessed her with Ruth
Yeah.
that wasn't that stuck. And I'm blessed to have some really amazing friends
Who are
that
your
they
friends?
yes, they come and they sit with me. They aren't scared off by my emotions.
Hmm.
Um, and Ruth, saw who Naomi was through all of those emotions she was feeling and stuck with her.
Right.
And she eventually, I think when they placed that baby in her lap, she finally got unstuck.
Yeah. And that's so important too, what you brought up. You have those friends that I called your Ruths.
Yes,
It's so important to have people around you who can help you kind of see your way through stuff when life gets tough, and celebrate with you when things are great. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's a valuable thing too, to know that it's okay to be real. Um, you don't want to do that with just anybody, but have that
No,
group where you can
no.
be real, because I think that's how people start suppressing stuff, and it turns into bitterness because they're keeping it all in. But
Yeah.
um, we are coming to the end of our episode. And there's a question that I ask all of my guests, and it's this: which one final gem can you leave with the audience that'll help them go to their next level of best around the things we've discussed today?
Well, so I almost started to give away the answer to this before because I knew you were going to ask it, so I'd been thinking about it.
Mhm.
But really, I would say, well, goodness, I mean, like we've already talked about, everybody goes through hard. My heart's kind of unique, but we all go through hard. It's inevitable. And sometimes the even harder hard are those things where you've put so much into it, whether it's your blood, sweat, and tears in a business or a project, or your heart and soul into a child that's gone wayward, a marriage that no matter what you've done, your spouse has walked away, or you get a bad health diagnosis when you really try to take care of yourself. I mean, the list is can go on and on. Where those devastating blows, where it's just like, what in the world is
Mhm.
happening? And it's easy, I like how you said how you get stuck sometimes.
Mhm.
And I think the gem I would want to leave people with is just keep going. Keep going.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if loving somebody is what got you hurt, don't stop loving people. Don't
Right.
stop. If it's your business that fell apart, don't don't go decide you're just going to live off the government. Keep building, keep
Yeah.
doing it, keep creating. Um, you know, don't quit holding on to hope for that child or whatever it may be. It's just, my theme throughout the book is rise,
Hmm.
that just continue to rise. And so that would be probably what I would leave them with is don't be afraid to be honest and say things aren't okay right now, but they're
Hmm.
going to be.
I want to encourage everyone, if you really found this talk interesting and you want to know more about Katrina's experience, her insights, and a perspective on the court system, um, to keep learning about this, or you're just intrigued by it, go out and get that book, Juror Number 11. And with that, Katrina, go ahead and share anything you would like the audience to know about how they can get in touch with you or get your book.
Well, the book is on Amazon. If you search juror number 11, like hashtag 11, it should come up. There are a couple other juror number 11 books. The subtitle of mine is A Memoir of the Broken Justice System and Rising from the Trials of Life.
Hmm.
And my picture's on the cover, so it's easy to spot. There's a Kindle version, hardback, paper book, and then I also did an audio book. If you're an audio listener, full disclaimer, I recorded it myself. So it is not, if you're somebody who listens to them all the time, it's not professionally narrated, but I did, since it was my story, I wanted it in my voice, but I had a huge learning curve in trying to master all of the sound terminology and get it recorded. But that is available. As far as my email is on the copyright page. I don't have a website or anything. I'm on Facebook. I've had individuals reach out to me on Facebook if they wanted to send me a message or something, and that's fine. But I'm fairly easy to find if you try hard enough.
Okay. And we are happy to put that information in the show notes. So, Katrina, thanks again. Thanks so much. Congratulations again on your son's graduation and the three graduations you've gone to back. And
Yes.
happy Mother's Day. This is Mother's Day weekend. So,
Yes.
again, I am so happy that you joined me on the show, and it's been a very informative conversation.
Yeah. That was great.